Now, just to brief you, last time we gave you a little discussion, a documentary film from BBC about philosophers and top philosophers, top 10. Actually, they were top 10 philosophers. Now, why are they classified as top 10? Because they were considered as historically significant philosophers who affected their societies. Now, they have certain ideas and principles or doctrines, we can call them. We call them ideological ideas or doctrines and principles. And they even maintain to emphasize and to have a special effect on our civilizations till nowadays, our contemporary civilization. We started now by number 10, that was David Hume. David Hume, we said that he's a Scottish philosopher, and he was known for his skepticism, or what is called the neo skepticism, which is early modern skepticism, based on beginning with hypothesis. And he said that any hypothesis we have to begin with hypothesis. That's the scientific method, and that human behavior is owned by passion rather than reason, and it's owned by also free will and cognition. So he was talking about the cognitive structure of the mind and so on. That's a brief description of our commentary on David Hume. Now, we have also Jean-Paul Sartre, or Sartre in French. He wanted to be human. He said that to be human is to be conscious and to be responsible. So he related humanity to consciousness and to responsibility. And even he worked on in a rational way in his reasonable thinking, till he reached the idea saying that if God exists, man is not free, and he was questioning freedom of man if God exists, and that was the problem that he ended with. Now, of course, I'm just giving you an example of his mentality and the way he thought. And we talked last time about different works that were so clear and known and famous by such philosophers. Now, John Locke also, who was a British philosopher, he talked about, if you remember, tabula rasa. That is the mind as a blank page that people or any person can fill it with knowledge according to his or her experience. That was the main idea by John Locke. And then we talked also about Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the French, we call him also a revolutionist because he was the introduction to the French Revolution also. The French Revolution that was caused, as I gave you last time, after the American Revolution also, or affected by the American Revolution. But many great philosophers in France were the reason behind that. Now we reach another philosopher to continue, which is number 6 here. Of course, we are talking them according to their importance. So number 1 is more important than number 10, and so on. In what definition they are more important? In the way they affected contemporary ideologies and civilizations till nowadays. Now, what about Socrates? Now, you know Socrates, you know Plato, and you know Aristotle. Now, if you want to define them historically, you say Socrates number 1, and then Aristotle, and then Plato. But if we want to talk about their importance affecting knowledge and affecting civilizations and contemporary thought, I would rather put them this way: Aristotle number 1, okay, and then Plato, and then Socrates. So as if we are saying that the student, okay, is more influential than the teacher in a way. Yes, and that's true, because we're talking about here the way they customize ideas, and the way they tackle ideas freely according to their and they think about certain ideas and principles raised by their teachers, philosophers, who taught them such thoughts, but in a more free way and customized according to their time. Okay. Now, this is Socrates. Now I will continue the video. I'll stop. I'll just comment on them. Okay. I know that you can't hear now the comments of the that you'll see here, but we'll talk about them. Okay. So he talked about unexamined life. He said that. So he's talking about examining life, and that if you do not examine life, that does not worth living. Okay. So that was his logic, and this is why some people thought that this is very critical if you think this way. Okay, of course, now Socrates is known for two things. He considered justice and virtue. So he talked about virtues, many virtues. So he was talking about ethical and moral education. And he started by the biggest virtue, which is, let's say, the most important virtue, which is what we call as justice, what he called as justice, okay? Of course, he was talking about certain strategies that the mind can use to reach certain answers. So that was what he called dialectic strategy. Okay, so you know, even in Arabic they call it التفكير الديالكتيكي, they call it in Arabic. Okay. And he reached what is called universal truth. So it's like the utmost truth. So if you follow that kind of reasoning or dialectical thinking and strategic dialectical thinking, you'll reach what is called, what he called the universal truth. So he used, now they are saying that he used the method of asking questions, keep on asking questions. This is why we say that also the Arab mind or the Arab world is criticized, that we don't teach philosophy. This is why students are not used to raising questions. They are used simply to answering questions. And they think he thought, Socrates, that if you train students to raise questions, that would make them more open and can critically use their minds. That was his main way, or the main way to proceed in teaching. So he was talking about how sometimes power, if I ask you a question, I'm using the power to regulate your thinking so that you cannot think out of the box. This is what he thought. But if I leave you and you to raise your questions the way you like, that will be away from authority. So that will make you think freely. This is the Socrates thought. And he has a very important saying, which says, I know, therefore I know nothing. That was very important. And كان يعتبر a person who says that he knows or she knows, that's one of the signs that you don't know. If you say I do know, and you continue saying I do know everything, which means that actually you don't know. So it's quite the opposite. He said, I don't know, or I do know that I don't know anything. Okay, that was his saying. Of course, now Socrates, because of his method of thinking and the way he taught the youth, he was accused by, in Athens, the place he was in, and by the authority, and he was sentenced to death, accused of corruption and the abuse of the minds of the youth. You can imagine that. So he was considered as one of the martyrs of the love of philosophy and knowledge. And he was also considered as the pioneer of philosophers and contemporary philosophers. Okay, this is how he affected knowledge. Now, before we continue, let me. Here we are. Let's say here. I want to escape here. Wait, please. Okay. Let me give you here another idea about Socrates in details. Socrates, as you can see, he was in some other languages, he was written as this. He's Socrates, as an ancient Greek rhetorician. Okay, so we have more than one. The Greek rhetoricians who were talking about the teachings and the writings at that time in Athens. And in ancient Greek, he was considered as the one who thought as the founder of Western philosophy. This is what I told you now, the founder of Western philosophy, referring to his thoughts were, very clear till nowadays. And you can see that the word philosophy itself originated from the Greek, ancient Greek of Socrates. Or he discussed, as I told you, when we talk about justice, he talked about moral philosophy, or sometimes we call it ethics. So it's ethics or moral philosophy, which is a branch, as I told you before, a branch of philosophy, which involves systemizing, defending and recommending concepts of right and wrong. So it's mainly the defense for what is right, what is wrong, and the idea of truth. And also he studied, or he went through another field, which is called aesthetics, which is the study of art and does not study the philosophy of art and the values that matter in terms of morality and in terms of aesthetics. And that branch was called axiology, which is concentrated on the term of value. So it is value. When you talk about value, you're talking about axiology in philosophy. So some values like truth and false, wrong and right, like happiness and justice and so on, and freedom and so on. Now that affected Western ethics or ethical tradition or thoughts. So they illustrated because of him the ideas of virtue ethics and ethical theories. When they try to define what is right, what is wrong, and why is it considered like that? In what are the justifications for that? What is a good action and bad action, and how consequences affect the result, and so on. So that was in application, okay, taken into application. Of course, we can think of him in different ways, but a very important thing is the dialogues of Plato, حوارات Socrates, we call them. He was affected by dialogues of Plato, who said that philosophers during the classical period in ancient Greece are in terms of the thoughts and the Platonist according to Plato, okay, thoughts. And there were also many institutions that continued Socrates' thoughts and comprehensive work. We have what we call Platonic Socrates, which means Socrates affected by Plato's ideas and thoughts, which is in the middle between Socrates and Plato in a way. So that was the whole idea, let's say. So he also studied the fields of ethics, as we said, and he studied also the field of what we call epistemology. And I told you before that epistemology is a branch of philosophy that is concerned with knowledge. Okay, so here we're talking about knowledge and the epistemic justification. When you say epistemic justification, which is based on knowledge, okay, يعني التفسير المعرفي, okay, behind the truth and rationality of belief. So it is one of the major things, and that leads to you can, if you study epistemology, you will reach the theme of logic, المنطق, okay, through epistemology. Now you can see here the Socratic problem. Problem is anything defined. You know that in methods of scientific research, you begin with defining the problem. So this is what he worked on, Socrates, that you should start with the Socratic problem. That is the beginning, to define it, okay? And then you find the solutions through the questions or questioning. So all the scientific methods that we are using now, you can go back to Socrates and also to Plato and Aristotle. Later we'll talk about them, that caused such ideas. Of course, he discussed many themes. So if you study his philosophy, you'll see the Socratic method, المنهج السقراطي, they call it in Arabic, and you'll see his beliefs, his paradoxes المتناقضات, how he thought of them. For example, life and death, good and evil, and so on. Okay, and he reached the idea of knowledge and then virtue, and also he talked about politics. Okay, and so on. Now he has many works related to his disciples or to his works. For example, his Socratic method, for example, is based on what is called dialectic. And what is dialectic, as I told you now, it is any base of course. It's a course or discourse that may be between two or more people. It's حوار, okay, and where you try to establish the truth through reasoning and the reasoned methods. يعني by using the reasoning, method of reasoning, المنطق والعقلانية, okay, through your arguments or argumentation, you reach the truth. So it's like a debate, but based on what we call dialectical method. So this is what he called Socrates or Socratic dialogue. Okay, and also discussed certain concepts like justice, for example, justice as you know, the essence or the principle that he thought it is a way to reach or to fulfill the utmost, let's say, theme of life. Okay, and that he was affected also by Plato, affected by him. Now we have his political philosophy. Political philosophy, as you can see, it's the study of politics or the philosophy of politics. And here he concentrated on certain virtues or certain ideas like liberty, justice, and property, and rights, and law. So all the ideas that were in nowadays philosophy or contemporary philosophy in Western philosophy, like human rights, like law and order, okay, like free will, okay, they were originally from the political philosophy that belonged to Socrates. Okay, also ethics and moral philosophy as a branch, as I told you, he discussed many virtues concerning the Western philosophy at that time, and he used the cognitive behavior therapy Also, this is very important. The CBT, they call it the CBT. In psychology, if you have an idea or if you study psychology or read in psychology, you will see that it was the base of psychosocial intervention, which is the cognition, the mind recognizing things, and behavior affected by the mind. So that was the major way to use his therapy. And he focuses on challenges or challenging the changes of the mind and the cognitive styles and sometimes cognitive distortions that affect human behavior in general. And of course, that is affected by emotion and the regulation of emotions. So it's the control of emotions and so on. So that's his method of CBT. And it's well known till nowadays. Of course, we said also that he has his questions, that he used questions to continue on his discussions by raising many propositions that may give them, when he put them in a pragmatic context, he will reach the meaning or the semantics of the story itself. Of course, he raised many beliefs based on his proposition of the world, how the way he thought of the world as true. And of course, he was the one to think that any belief may be either true or false. So he's the one who was given that idea, or the first one to think about it, true or false, right and wrong, and so on. The two ways of thinking of things. And he was using his method through what is called a negative method of hypothesis. And again, this is what is known nowadays in scientific methodology, Shabab. When we use any hypothesis, if you ever wrote a question, a questionnaire, or if you work on a research paper, they think that scientists think that you should start with hypothesis. And that was, he also said that you should start with a negative method of hypothesis, which is you propose an explanation for a phenomena, and you try to prove it scientifically using scientific method. And that deeply needs what is called a test. You need a test to prove that. And you cannot prove that unless you begin with the negation of it. For example, you say, for example, you want to prove that man is there, man is al-insan mawjood, okay? So you begin with negating that. You say that man is not, it does not exist. So if you reach the idea that no, he exists by negating the negation, you will reach the idea. That was his methodology. Okay, so he used contradictions in different ways, saying that contradiction consists of logical incompatibility. So he was thinking of contradiction as, if used logically, by that you can prove the main belief and what he called the validity. Okay, and this is another term that we use in scientific research, as-sidq wal-thabat. Okay, so that's the sidq, which is valid. We say this is valid, the validity of the belief itself. So he also discussed many perceptions, such as form of the good, أو مثال الجيد, أو الخير, what he said, الخير. Okay, so the idea of the good is a concept, mainly that was by philosophy of Plato. And Plato, we'll talk about him later in his what is called the Republic, الجمهورية. He was speaking of the character of Socrates as the form of a philosopher who used philosophy in training, يعني استخدمها في التدريب. So that was through his students, when he taught his students how to use his philosophy. And of course, he talked, a philosopher like Karl Popper, a British philosopher. He described also the dialectic of Socrates as the art of, you see, the art of intellectual intuition. So it is intellectual intuition. حدس فكري, okay, so حدس, okay, with da, حرف الدا. It's like حدس فكري, into intellectual intuition, and where if you use it, you visualize the divine original idea that he used, which is the mind. And he was like, or many thinkers who thought or who believed in the subject of the logos. Now, what's the logos? The logos is a term in Western philosophy and psychology, also used in religion. It was derived from the Greek word, which means, this is how it was written, the Greek word here, logos. And it means the ground, or it is, if you can see, the opinion, okay, or the word al-kalima, okay. In the Bible we say في البدء كانت الكلمة, and that's the word logos, okay, which is knowledge, which is the discourse, and so on. So that was the beginning of the word logos that he used, and he turns the soul away of the sensible work itself, and so on. Now, that's very brief here. We can also see, for example, his major paradoxes. His major paradoxes like this one, when he said, of course, now if we have what is called the Socrates paradox, which is, I know that I know nothing. See, here you have paradox. How do you know that if you take the first part, I know, this is positive. I know nothing, this is negative. So it's positive and negative in the same time. This is paradox, okay? So I know that I know nothing. So it's in saying that he derived it from Plato's account of a Greek philosophy, Socrates, and he called this as Socratic paradox. Okay. What else? So he talked about academic skepticism, and that's the way to, when you reach, you try to get away from ignorance through academic skepticism. So you refer to skepticism as a period of ancient Platonism here, and of course he tried to use this method to reach the scientific philosophical skepticism, which is, as I told you, many questions. You raise many questions to reach the possibility of knowledge, and then you reach your judgment or your answer. Okay. So here are the major things. Of course, he was referring to the Republic many times of Plato. What else? I'm just picking you some of the main things. Let's see here. Knowledge. We discussed major part of it, but let's see here the symposium, Plato's symposium, which is a philosophical text. Okay. That was written by Plato, and here he tried to attend banquets. Then banquets at that time were known for discussions, for debates that to discuss many notable speeches raised by them. And of course, they used the Republic, which is a Socrates dialogue, Socratic dialogue, and authored by Plato. So it is Plato talking about the dialogues that happened by Socrates. Okay, so it's the student talking about his teacher, which is Socrates, and the way he used to think and raise questions through dialogues with his students. And he called it the Republic, Jumhuriyya. جمهورية أفلاطون, okay, which is very idealistic, okay, سميها الجمهورية الفاضلة. So he ordered, he was considering many ideas like justice, like order, and so on. So he talked about the city-state, if you remember when we talked about city-state of Athens and Roman theories and so. So that was his the way he thought. Of course, he believed in Socrates. Socrates believed that humans are opposed to gods. For example, like Apollo, that we studied before. This is Apollo as one of the Olympian, you remember, deities, and that was in classical Greek, and also in Roman religion, if you remember. Where you can see the many national, national divinity of the Greeks, okay? And he was the one to represent music. So he was god of music, god of truth, god of prophecy, and so on. And also many virtues that he used to reflect his way of thinking. Now, let's talk about the allegory of the cave. In the Republic of Plato, the allegory of the cave, اللي هي صورة الكهف, بيحكي عن الكهف هنا. So he was talking about Plato's cave. Plato's cave is an allegory presented by the Greek philosopher Plato in his works, The Republic, and he compared that to the effect of education and the lack of it on our nature. So it's written in the dialogue, you can see it in Plato's lines, where he talked about the idea that when people get into a cave, imagine, the story is that imagine people being in a cave and being born in a cave, and they know nothing out the space of that cave. So they will be ignorant of whatever happening outside the cave, and they will not even recognize that there's something else outside the cave. And this is his theory, which is the allegory of the cave. Of course, you can see many other things written by him. We can see also his talk about virtue and how we should, it's worth living, that we should examine it, we should check what is right, what is wrong, what is virtue, what is not, and so on. And of course, many ideas that he discussed. Also, when he talks about virtue, for example, he talked about the unexamined life, which is not worth living. And he was trying to understand what happens when people, for example, commit suicide. What happens in that term? What about the trial? And of course, that was very dangerous because he was teaching his students. And because of that, he was subsequently sentenced to death, because according to his description that in Plato's Apology. But in politics, he discussed ideas like democracy and the way that is introduced nowadays in Western philosophy or Western thought. And also he discussed ideas like tyranny, okay, the tyranny and authority and the legislations and the government, okay, and how it should be. And he also discussed the idea of amnesty, given a pardon extended by the government. So amnesty, as we can see nowadays, Amnesty International, for example, that constitutes like a pardon to people, that you can give them excuses to do what they want. It's like immunity for the authority in a way. Okay, you can say it this way, and so on. Okay, so that's let's say in brief about Socrates. And you can see here in the references You can see here many books and writings about Plato and his political philosophy, his moral philosophy, and his even way of thinking, and even his trial that was based on what happened with him during his classical works. Okay, that was introduced in his classical works later on. Okay. So that's Socrates. I'll copy it for you later. To continue now with another, let me continue with we finished number 6, which is Socrates. We'll continue now with number 5, which is Confucius. Okay, so that is another philosopher, Confucius, very famous. We will talk about him now. So his main concern was that he realized there is chaos in the world, and he wanted to have to raise certain ideas to remedy. Okay, so he wanted to have remedies for such chaos in the world. That was his idea. So he thought that that traditional Chinese values, they can heal the world. They can have a kind of effect on the world, healing and restoring, and restoring the whole problems in the world in a way. So restructuring by traditional Chinese values. So he thought that his method is through having a Chinese method to cure and purify the world, let's say. So what were the main principles of Confucius? They were based on love of others, okay, and self order, having a kind of order that you should accept the world and accept others. Okay, he called them the golden rules. Okay, golden rules that you should stick to ethically. Of course, you can see the effect of his values and the methods of teachings, Confucius, in Asia, in East Asia. You can see many of them manifesting till nowadays. Now, let's talk about number 5 to continue with that and see what else did Confucius have done. This is Confucius, okay. And you can see that Confucius in Chinese, it's a philosopher, a Chinese philosopher who originated in the spring. And this is why they celebrate spring and autumn period. And, at that time, it was known as the 100 schools of thought, okay? The 100 schools of thought. And it was intellectually very significant cultural development way of thinking that affected Chinese philosophy later on. Now, what about spring and autumn? This is the period where Chinese history thought that it's very important. The first half of Eastern Zhou, they call it Zhou period, and that's the spring and autumn annals, they call it. And that's a very important tradition. This is why you can understand why Chinese people like spring and like the art of flowers and decorations and so on. And they considered what is called we have the Chinese sages or philosophers, and this is because of him we have what is called Confucianism, al-Confuciya in Arabic, according to them, it's a system of thought and behavior. So it's not only thinking, it's thinking and behavior, okay? And it originated from ancient China, also known, some people call it Ruism, and in that tradition they describe philosophy and religion and humanity, and what they call it a humanistic rationalistic religion. So they don't believe that it's from it's not Samawi here, it is humanistic, okay? So it's humanistic and rationalistic religion, Aqlani. So they believe in rationalism, and they believe it's a way of governing life, but in a simple way. And that was, they called it the 100 philosophy or golden rules. Now, this is the 100 schools of thought, where they were philosophies and schools that flourished, okay, in the 16th century, and that was before Christ till 221 before Christ, during the spring, you see, during the spring, which is till autumn period, and that was in states of China. And they thought that it was the only the era that that's to be suppressed, to be ruled by law, by legalists, in a way, by a certain dynasty that ruled that place. And until later came what is called a new Confucius or Confucianism, which is a moral, ethical, and metaphysical Chinese philosophy. So it's more moral, let's say, Confuciya al-Jadida, they call it. More moral, and ethical. It's based on ethics and metaphysical also, influenced, of course, by Confucianism itself, which is originated by Han, Yu, and Liu. And according to them, they refer to the same dynasty, which is Tang dynasty. Okay. Now, if you want to understand that more, you go back to the Chinese classical texts that were called also the canonical texts. Okay, and they refer to the main Qin dynasty. That were at that time referring to their 4 books and 5 classics. They call them 4 books and 5 classics. Okay, and there, if you read them, you will have an idea about the Confucian tradition, and how they think of law, how it should be, and they concentrate on love and respect as major virtues. Now you can see here what is called the golden rule. You can see here the golden rule, which is the principle of treating others as you want to be treated. And you can see this in تحب للآخرين ما تحبه لنفسك. You can see this in many religions too, but this is the golden rule that they stick to as the principle of treating others. And of course, it is a maxim that is found in most religions now, also till nowadays, in many cultures, to be considered as one of the major, items in ethics. In ethics of what we call ethics of reciprocity. Reciprocity is based on dealing with others, okay, dealing with others. So in الأخلاقيات التعاملات, okay, we say it. In some religions, you can see this that some religions, they treat others differently. For example, you may see that, for example, in some religions, without mentioning what they are, you can think about it, that they treat others who are not from their religions in a different way, okay? And this is not accepted according to Confucius and to the golden rule of treatment and ethic reciprocity, okay? And that was going back to a tradition, another tradition, which is called Taoism or Daoism, At-Tawiyya in Arabic, which is a philosophical tradition of Chinese origin that emphasizes living in harmony. This is very important, harmony. You know the idea of harmony, al-insijam, Even what you can see in nowadays contemplation and meditation, التأملات, it's all based on harmony between the parts of the body, harmony in your thinking, harmony with others in the universe, harmony of every part of the universe, and so on. See, so harmony of the particles and so on. See, so it's everything based on what is called Taoism and Taoism. They call them. And of course, his teachings have great effect till nowadays in the world, around the world, and they are very influential. You can here see the different ideas. You can see begin with his philosophy, with their philosophy, Confucius, and this is the ethics. This is very important. So it's very known that ethics in China is very important, Shabab. So it's all based on their ethics, akhlaqiyat. This is their religion, Confucius. It's mainly ethics, okay? As I told you, it's humanistic. It's not from above. So this is the main article which is about Confucian ethics. And here, this is a part of it, which says, when the stables were burned down, on returning from court, Confucius said, "Was anyone hurt?" He did not ask about the horses. So here are some of the virtues and the words from that were taken. For example, here the virtue ethics. It's theories. We consider them as normative. Normative means you consider them according to certain norms, معيارية, okay? So you see, this is right, this is wrong, this is accepted, this is not. And so why do you say that? According to certain norms. So as if you are having a certain rule, you know, and based on that, you compare it to that rule, for example, to accept it or not. For example, if I say, number 10 is excellent, so number 5 is average, and number 0 is not acceptable, and so on. See, so you have a norm. This is very important in ethics. And they also he also considered many ideas like illusion and so on. I don't want to concentrate on that. I want to concentrate on the idea of humanism, because all the discussion of Confucius were on morality and humanism, which is a physical, you know, philosophical stance that emphasizes the value. You see, so it's talking about the value of human beings, why human beings are important, why they are valued. Okay, so it's about humanism. It's about respecting others, and so on. Okay. And they also considered what is called, we have, as I told you here, the golden rule, which is the ethic of reciprocity, which is treating others as if you want to be treated. And we have what is called the silver rule also. So the golden rule is the principle of treating others. Okay, it's the maxim. Okay, it's the maxim that is found in most religions. Now, it can be considered as an ethic of reciprocity here, as we said. Now, the silver rule, it's owing its negative form. It's quite the opposite. Okay, so we have two forms, golden and silver. They wanted to accomplish the golden rule. Okay, that was in the way they believed righteousness can be achieved. Okay, so it is the quality of state being morally correct and justifiable. See, so this is al-haq, they call it righteousness, or al-adala. So it's a state of being morally justifiable, tabrir akhlaqi, okay, morally justifiable. So they considered it can be considered as synonymous with rightness. So when you say righteousness, it's like rightness, it's like being upright. And it can be found also in many other religions. For example, in India, the Abrahamic traditions also We call them as theological concepts. Okay, in Hinduism also you can see this, in Buddhism you can see this, and so on. We'll talk later about certain ideas in other religions. Okay, we have also the term of self-interest and selfishness, which is being considered excessive or exclusive. Okay, so they were against the idea of, or the state of selfishness, al-ananiya, and they think that selfishness leads you to concentrating more on pleasure, on having the advantage of someone else, or the regarding anything according to the welfare or pleasure, while they wanted to concentrate on what is right, or the righteousness idea instead of that. Okay, so that's the major idea. So they talked also about natural morality, which is that by nature we acquire morality if we teach our religious teachings correctly. And he thought of what is called the great learning, or they call it the Dak-2, which was one of the 4 books in Confucian. In Confucianism, they have 4 books, very important books. They call them the great learning. Okay, التعليم العظيمة. Okay, أو العلم العظيم. Okay, which is the chapter which became later as a form of a chapter in Book of Rights. They call it Book of Rights. And rights with an R, okay? And it formed one of the 5 classics also in Confucius teachings. Now, we can see also they talked about the mandate of heaven, which is a Chinese political or religious teaching used in ancient imperial China, okay? Which is, and that one, the mandate of heaven, is the thing that justifies the rule of king or the rule of emperor. This is why they have emperor of China, imperatoria, okay, which is because of the mandate of heaven. And what they call the son of heaven, or the ruler of China as the son of heaven, or the celestial empire, and so on. Okay, so they want to reach what is called the social perfection, which is the state of perfection, as it is complete with no flaws. So it's the idea of flow or flawlessness, the supreme excellence. This is why you can see that till nowadays in China, in Singapore, in Korea, those who believe in Confucianism, they believe that they should be perfect. And if you know anybody from their places, such countries, you can see that they are so highly moral. They are so good, ethically, and they are so they try to be perfect. Okay. So they believe in excellence, for example, because this is according to their religion. When we say religion, it's not only religion from above. You can talk about humanistic religion, al-mu'taqad, okay? And they raised also, Confucius did not believe in the concept of democracy. This is why you can see that in China, for example, you have the Marxist system. They believe that democracy is not acceptable, and they believe that the elite, or it should be governing everything, and they can reach through that order, and they argued the representation of truth also, and every way to define their virtues in a certain way. So that is concerning ethics, concerning politics. We said we have the idea of legalism also, which is, according to Figia, this is one of the thinkers, is one of 6 classical schools of thought in China, Figia, and which literally means the house of administrative methods. So talking about methods using administration, or the methods of standards and law, okay? And that's the school that represented all realistic statements later on. Okay, we talked about this. What else? Okay, that's it. Now there's even in facial expression. This is it. In facial expression, which is if you use different positions of the muscles to represent a certain communicative, non-verbal communication form. So they believe that the truth must always be represented. This is why they till nowadays they think that different smiles, different ways of smiling represent different communication or different messages to be spread through Confucius behavior, okay, and so on. So they wanted to represent it through their behavior, through their contemporary works also, and human life. Okay, so lots of things that reflect the ideas of Confucianism. Now we want to talk about number 4. And I wonder if I still have time. Yeah, I'll try to end here. I think that I'll stop here. Next time we'll start with number 4, which is Descartes. So we finished now today Socrates and Confucius. Next time we'll start with Descartes, and I'll stop here recording.